Oh boy. This one was something. Time flight. Yeah, so not only did I decide to do a Fifth Doctor story, the Fifth Doctor being the one whose era I have the hardest time with. Well, no, actually, that's not necessarily true. I could arguably say that I have a harder time with the Sixth Doctor, but by now I've discovered that I love him in Big Finish, so I've at least got that. Fifth Doctor, he's generally better liked in the TV run than the Sixth Doctor is, but boy, is it rough for me. And this one is a notoriously rough one, which is why I figured, like, let me get this out of the way. Not save this towards the tail end and have it ruin my impression of his time. This one's a little bit notorious, largely just for how bad it looks. This was the final story of Davison's first season, and they'd basically run out of money. Like, this is coming on the heels of Earthshock, which looked quite good and had a lot of impressive visual elements to it. And it's very clear they had no money left when they did this. The only impressive thing is the use of actual Concorde jets. And for all I know, they bought stock footage for that. I don't know. But this definitely doesn't look good. Now, Davison himself, if I remember the quote correctly, went on the record saying that he actually thought it was a good story. He acknowledges it doesn't work, but he basically says it was because they were out of money and it was still a good story. I don't think I agree with that. I mean, even if I try and take into account the possibility that there were some last minute rewrites to account for how little money that they were going to have, and like that caused some of the problems, and maybe there was an earlier version where the story worked better, just some of the core components just, it's like, what? This is going to be a hard one to try and synopsize because I could barely follow what was going on. This thing has a massive problem with telling and not showing. Again, that may well be because of some sort of rewrites or reconfiguration because they couldn't afford to show much. But there is so much technobabble in this. There is so much just talking utter nonsense that by about halfway through the third of this four-parter, my brain kind of zoned out. I'm like, it's like the processing center of my brain just went, I can't with this. And it just started going in one ear and out the other. I couldn't keep trying to make sense of it. I understand what the component pieces were. I'm not sure I could tell you how they fit together. And I don't know how much of that is because they just flat out didn't fit together, or how much of that was just my brain giving up. So here we are. Premise, at least starting, is solid because it's just a good starting premise to have a flight vanish, land somewhere it shouldn't be, imagery like empty unoccupied airports, empty runways. Like, there's a certain inherent tension and creeping dread that comes with stuff like that. And it's been used to varying degrees of effectiveness from everybody from the Twilight Zone to Stephen King. So, like, there's a solid starting idea there with the idea that a Concorde flight has vanished through time, and now the Doctor, Tegan, Nyssa, and the crew of another Concorde trying to recreate what happened go about trying to get it back, trying to rescue the passengers and all that. They end up going way back in time, which basically has no meaning. Like, there's nothing about the setting that actually does anything with the fact that this is long ago Earth. Like, it kind of comes back at the very end, like almost as a joke for how the crew of the second Concorde is going to prove that what they're saying is real, because they'll be able to like excavate and dig up the by now hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years old remains of the first one. But like, other than that one detail, they might as well have gone through a space warp and landed on a different planet. It didn't matter that this was ancient Earth. Like, it really didn't. It doesn't factor in any way, shape, or form. So there's that. And then there's, okay, so even in synopsizing and starting to get into some of the issues, I'm gonna have to get into spoilers quickly. So just be aware. Starting premise: Concord gets sent back in time. The Doctor and his companions and some others follow to try and fix it. They end up in the same place, and then there's all this weirdness. There's like a hypnotic suggestion thing going on, and there's seems to be contradictory hypnotic suggestions. Something is commanding the passengers and the crew to do one thing while others are pulling it in another direction, and like there's a whole bunch of weirdness going on with that, and they just have to resolve that and get home. Part of the problem is like, it really does not get any more complicated than we just need to get everybody on the Concorde again and go home. There are a couple of attempts to escalate it beyond that, but they don't really feel like they do much. But in any case, okay, so the villain, Khalid, who's, oh boy. So I don't, between the name and like some references to Arabia, I think they were trying to go for a Middle Eastern thing, except the sort of pidgin English and the robe that they have him in, and the very crusted over facial prosthetic look that they have on him, to me felt a bit more yellow face. It might just be so muddled that it's just offensive to everybody instead of one specific group. Regardless, this guy chanting, mumbling nonsense. And I will hypnotize you with my mystical powers. And like he's doing that immediately. Like as soon as we see this guy, we know he's the villain. Which is why, spoilers, the twist that he's actually the master is deeply pointless. Like there is literally no reason other than the idea of, ooh, it's really the master being something of value in and of itself. Other than that idea, there's no reason that it just couldn't have been the master literally from the beginning. It's not like Khalid being the villain is in any way a surprise. We figure that out basically the instant we see the guy. And they don't even keep up the pretense of Khalid being his own thing all that long. Like it gets dropped halfway through. It's not even like the episode 3 twist where, oh gosh, the master's here. Like, no, we find it out well before when you would normally play that if you were going to actually try and leverage that as a twist. And they have to reveal him that early because him trying to fix his TARDIS or steal the Doctor's TARDIS or swap components between TARDISes and or all of the above like becomes kind of a major plot point for later on. But like Khalid, no, there's no point. There is no point in this whole character, and there is no depth to him. It doesn't even really work as a twist because he's nothing. He's a nothing of a character, nothing of a villain. We don't know even ostensibly why he was doing anything. Like once the master gets revealed, we find out why the master is doing stuff, but we don't even know what the cover story was for Khalid. And why would he do that? What? Why? Why would he even bother doing that? I don't know. I just don't get what the idea of that was, other than just the general notion of, well, the master likes to reveal himself out of a disguise and go, surprise, it was me, and just like the idea of doing that again. Why? Because it's a thing he does. Okay, I don't think that's enough to justify what's going on, but okay. That's a thing you can do, I guess. I mentioned the budget. Like, okay. While I don't think better effects would have saved this, they don't help. Like, there is so much janky compositing and blue screen. At one point, the characters are blue screened just walking on the Heathrow tarmac. It looks like stuff I saw high school film clubs do in the 90s when they first tried out green screen or blue screen. That might have even been. It's rough, and it just is so jarring because it looked like they did actually shoot on location at Heathrow for other stuff, but like they had to do blue screen for this. Oh boy, that's rough. And then there's these monsters that are barely explained. There's like the plasmatons, which are just these lumpy gray things with no arms. They just kind of wobble back and forth. And then there's like this overlaid cloud effect that is just it's just an after effect, and it's just so blatantly overlaid over footage that the actors didn't know what the heck they were reacting to, and it's so like even trying to account for the time, it's very clear that they had no resources for this. It looks like it. Like, this is the kind of episode, if you showed this to someone who's never seen Classic Who before, this is the kind of episode that would make them go, why would anybody still watch this other than nostalgia? It's real rough to look at. And like I said, the story never pulls together. It's like, okay, well, we need to rescue these people, and then Khalid / the Master is like doing hypnotic suggestion. Now he's stealing TARDIS pieces and this, and then we've got these this alien thing that's an entire race of aliens who like crashed here, and the Master like killed them all, but they crushed all of their consciousness into this one thing. But because, no species is a monolith, there's all this contradictory, some of them want to do bad, some of them want to do good, and it's sort of this weird gestalt entity thing that could have been an interesting idea. Like, I like the general notion of like, yeah, they don't all want the same thing, so there's contradictory energies and desires coming off this thing, and like there's something you could do with that. This doesn't really do anything with it other than introduce it in a way that is confusing and weird, and I had a hard time following, and ultimately, again, impacted the story very, very, very little. So it just kind of meanders along from beat to beat and just sort of stumbles from beginning to end. The supporting cast is okay. I kind of liked the captain of the Second Concorde a fair bit. What I liked about him is he started out as one of those sort of, well, this can't possibly be what it seems like types. But then once he gets clear evidence in front of his eyes, like, no, this is what the doctor says it is. He's just, okay, what do you need me to do? How can I help? And he's not questioning it anymore. And I was actually kind of just pleased to see that, because a needlessly contrarian, this couldn't possibly, there must be a rational explanation. Like, that's just a trope of a character that just jams up the story and is almost never interesting, because what they say and how they behave is incredibly predictable and it doesn't contribute anything to proceedings. It's very rare that a character like that adds much. I'm not going to say it never does, but it's rare. So I was relieved that the captain didn't turn out to be that, though it looked like he was going to start to be. Except then we get introduced to the professor, who very much is that, right up until a sudden heroic sacrifice that feels way undermotivated and not sufficiently justified. I don't even know. There's just this, he turns on a dime and like all of a sudden, let me sacrifice myself to save you. I'm like, but you don't even believe any of this is what it is. What do you, again, it wouldn't have been impossible to make this work, but it just doesn't here. They do some interesting things with Nyssa. She's a lot more susceptible, not to the hypnotic suggestion, but sort of tapping into the psychic energies that are around, and that leads to some good moments with her, which is nice, because some episodes don't really seem to know what to do with her. There's Tegan, who is coming off of the loss of Adric. I mean, they all are, but it clearly hit Tegan a lot harder. She has some good moments in this. She just doesn't take crap. And I also love that towards the end, she just clicks into airline flight attendant mode and is guiding the passengers back onto the Concorde to get back to the right time. That was just great. The doctor just left her at Heathrow. It's very brief, because I'm pretty sure the very next story was Arc of Infinity, where like the doctor meets up with her again. If I remember correctly, I think that was a coincidence though. So like, he just left her there. And I guess you can make an argument that because she had previously, during her time with the doctor, expressed a desire just to get to Heathrow and be done with the traveling, that he just assumed that that's that she would be happy now. But maybe check with her, or at the very least say goodbye, because if you tried, you would have realized she actually didn't want to stop traveling with you yet. But say you just bolt and leave her there? What a dick! It's just such a dick move, and it just happened suddenly at the end, with final notes from Tiki making it very clear she didn't want to be left behind. Like, it's stuff like that makes the Fifth Doctor really hard for me to fully relate to and roll with. I don't get the guy. I really don't get him. And he also doesn't really feel like he moves a lot of what's going on. It's not quite to the level of, say, Revelation of the Daleks, where it feels like the Doctor literally has almost no impact on the story whatsoever. It's not to that degree, but there is a little bit of, how much are you actually contributing to this other than trying to explain to the audience what it is that's going on? Because it seems like most of the other characters are moving the plot more than you. You know, with like the captain and one of the other crew members, you know, sneaking onto the TARDIS and switching components around in a way that might frustrate the master, and that weird Gestalt entity alien thing that's pushing the plot a bit more. Honestly, there were times that it felt like the professor pushed the plot more than the Doctor did. It was this thing's just a mess. Like this is hot nonsense. This is. And other than either being a completionist or just being somebody who is happy to take in the the worst of Doctor Who along with the best, like, I can't recommend this one, really. Other than having that kind of mentality where it's like, I want to see all of it, the highs and the lows. Like, unless you're that kind of person, I would deprioritize this one heavily. It's not offensively, wow, no, Khalid is definitely offensive. That part is offensively bad. Other than that, like, the core ideas aren't an offense to my intelligence. Khalid's a little bit of an offense to my sensibilities, but not to my intelligence necessarily. But it just doesn't pull together at all. This thing's just weird. And not in a particularly interesting way. Because sometimes some episodes of Doctor Who are weird in a way that makes you go, huh, I'm not sure that worked, but it was kind of interesting. That's honestly kind of the way I feel about Curse of Fenric, which I know other people swear by. I don't like it nearly as much as other people do, but I will at least admit it's interesting. This isn't even really interesting. It's just weird and stumbling and awkward. It's like a baby deer on the ice, but not cute enough to justify watching. Time Flight! Have you seen this thing? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. Those all help me out, but don't worry too much about it. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And I'd like to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lukfula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Geek Filter, Linda Walters, Jen, Anticade808, Becky Sparks, Frenobulax the Poodle, Robin Powell, T-Love, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Pal Barabajagal, and Mara G. Yes, we do have new rats in the house. Whoa, you want it? We actually have two. This is Brownie. I couldn't get Sprite to come out, but say hi. Thanks for the support.